Today's video we'll learn about Model Context Protocol or MCP. What is MCP and why it is used and how does it help us in the AI ecosystem? So let's take an example of how MCP is going to help us with the real-time problem while dealing with multiple AI models and multiple tools, and we call them as the many-to-many integration problem. So let's say you work for a company and the company is using three different AI models. There's one open AI, there's one Anthropic, and then there's one local LLM. Let's assume that each of these models need to interact with three different tools, the file system, the GitHub API, and let's also say it has to access data from the local CRM API. Without an MCP, you're essentially talking here about 9 different separate integrations for each combination. As you can see in the picture, every model has its own integration to the tools. Model A has A to T1, A to T2, and A to T3. And you're essentially repeating that integration. So it's not that you develop for one model and then one tool is going to repeat that. No, you have to develop that custom integration for each one of them. And that's what we call as a many-to-many integration problem. The number of AI models and the number of tools that you have are essentially multiplied here. And as you know that in today's world where you're introducing a new model every day, a new system is accessed via the tools every day, you're essentially explosively adding more and more number of integrations. And not to forget, if you develop these integrations, you still have to integrate using the best practices on the coding, right? You still have to think about how to authenticate, how to do the required permissions, how to handle the errors, how to send the data in the real format expected by the APIs or the systems, how to handle the securities while doing the transactions and requests, right? Along with the need for a custom wrapper API or a custom SDK. So this many-to-many problem is a big problem if you're dealing with multiple models and multiple tools. And this is why MCP is going to help us. As you can see, because of these 9 integration, you can already imagine how you as a developer can write the different codes for each of these integrations, which are not going to be very friendly in terms of reusing them. It's going to be proprietary, used by you, created by your own standards. It may or may not be consistent with how the data and the code should look like as a general standard. Again, you may or may not be using the standard protocol to call different tools, different permissions, and the overall, the way you're handling the context in today's world, you're dealing with a lot of data. You're dealing with many files, memory requirements, and then also the API results. You can sometimes also use the structured data. And you use them differently, and everybody uses them differently. There is no standard way of dealing with those contexts. This is also not portable. So you cannot reuse the tool that you have built for one AI system to another AI system, right? So it's kind of a locked in, and you have to duplicate the work if you're trying to do that same work for another vendor, right? So as a developer, you have to rebuild the same logic repeatedly. That's like a waste of time and waste of your effort in developing these. And last and not the least is the way to access the data in the real world, right? In the real world, you're dealing with many APIs, open APIs calls, you're reading files, you're writing data, you are running different workflows, you're querying different type of databases. So all of those, how do you handle them in a safer way? And your answer is MCP. So now that you understand how MCP helps us, let's understand how MCP was introduced. Anthropic first came up with this idea to have a common or open standard for everybody to access and adopt, right? And today's AI world, everybody is following that and has adopted this concept of MCP. The MCP, which is the Model Context Protocol, is an open protocol that defines how AI models can access tools, retrieve data from various sources, how to use different external services, and also how to maintain the context. And not to forget, do all of this using a very secured and transparent manner. So MCP is essentially a universal language that allows AI assistants or AI models and the tools work together and without any custom integrations. So it acts as the middleware between the AI ecosystem and the real world. So how does the MCP fixes the problem we just knew about, right? So the many-to-many problem. With MCP, you implement one standard interface, one for the model and one for the tool. So instead of you multiplying those, you are essentially adding them, right? So in my example, let's say if I have to do before MCP, I had to write three different codes, one for GitHub to OpenAI, one for GitHub to Anthropic, and one for GitHub to local LLM. With MCP, I just need to build one MCP tool for the GitHub, and that will be portable to all the three AI models, OpenAI, Anthropic, or local LLM. I don't have to rewrite the code. I don't have to write any custom wrapper. I don't have to duplicate the logic. So this is how MCP fixes the M&N problem or the many-to-many problem. So let's take an analogy here. So to better understand how does MCP help AI world, right? Imagine you have to travel around the world and you don't have a power adapter which is universal, right? Every country has their own shapes of the plugs, different voltages, different sockets. So if you had to travel to different parts of the world in different countries, you essentially have to carry M into N adapters. So M devices, N countries, that's how you have a problem. If you didn't have this universal adapter for the power, right? So think of that in the context of AI world. You're dealing with multiple AI models, which are really your devices, your different wall sockets are your tools, and these plugs can be of different shapes. That's your custom integration. So how does MCP help? MCP is your universal adapter, which essentially is going to work for you everywhere. So you create one MC interface, it works for every tool. I hope this analogy helps you understand the concept of MCP better. If you are an AI developer, I'm sure this is going to be a very handy understanding the concepts of the MCP. In my future video, I'm also going to create some videos around MCP as a tool, how to use MCP. So keep looking for my next video. Thank you for watching.